Back to your weekly episode of Apple Leaks and News. Got a lot of iPhone 12 stuff, including some exclusives with Max Weinbach. The picture that's being painted right now is a lot different than the one we anticipated, but there are some exciting features in the works.
Ale videl som, že nejaký Razer phone má sa mi zdá 120 Hz display. To by bolo popiči, keby to spravia, to je nádherné.
If anything, iOS 14 has made me even more excited for what's to come. What an amazing release. I can't wait for the next beta. And yes, hidden features are coming, so sorry.
Počkaj, čo si tam napísal? 120 Hz za 1500 € si srč do píče? Nemusíš kupovať.
Just been really occupied with Phone Rebel. It's become a much bigger part of my life than I originally anticipated. And thank you guys. Honestly, I'm getting so much amazing feedback. I'm sorry for this release. We're still rolling out the Rebel series, but it's being rolled out in chunks depending on model number, more being shipped tonight and all next week. Wanted to say thank you for the support, guys, and the understanding.
Dobre, ukážem, ako to vypadá, a hlavne odkiaľ to má.
Related accessories, cases, screen protectors, and even these dummies. So originally shared by Sonny Dixon, we have a good clear look at what the square housing will look like for this year's iPhones. Very similar to that of the iPad Pro. Now the cameras are layout. They're slightly larger and protrude a little bit more. It looks odd. I really hope it's not like this. Again, I hope we're wrong on this one and that Apple did not share the final camera orientation with the accessory makers, nor the notch, which again still remains in that large format. Taking a closer look at those dummies.
Im to jebe, ale počúvaj. Toto tam už nebudú dávať túto kurvu, nie? No má 3 roky po sebe tam dajú takúto kurvu.
You can tell that the lens rings themselves are slightly thinner than that of the 11 Pro Max. On the 12 Pro Max model, they protrude far more. It's very strange. And I've got some iPhone 12 exclusives with Max Weinbach. So first off, a production update on ProMotion, the 120 Hz high refresh rate display. Max Weinbach's source says things so far are looking good. 120 Hz is still on the menu. The iPhone 12 Pro Max has passed 5 out of 5 hardware tests. The smaller model, the iPhone 12 Pro 6.1-inch, has not. It's only passed 4 out of 5 tests. This is because it's using a altered panel due to the sizing. Things are a little bit more condensed, but they believe that Apple can fix it in time, although it will cost them more, and Apple at this point is trying to decide whether or not it's worth it. So we may see a staggered 120.
Tu je 28.6. a to je pred 4 dňami. Toto je novšie, že toto. A preto je niekto iný, kurva.
I'm KBHD here. And you know what's exciting? We just started the second half of 2020, and we're hoping for is iPad Pro. A lot of the changes and improvements and additions we're expecting and hoping to see in this next iPhone.
Tento je dobrý, koľko má? 11 miliónov odberov?
Are kind of already in the iPad Pro, one of my favorite gadgets in a long time. But first thing you'll notice about this iPhone 12 stuff is the sizes. There's 3 sized models here representing basically what we'll see as
Jak sa k tomu to vôbec dostane ten človek?
iPhone 12, iPhone 12.
Aj tak mal Samsung prvý 128 Hz, 120 Hz. Gratulujem. Vyhrali ste.
Pro and iPhone 12 Pro Max. But this time, as you can see, the non-Pro phone is the smallest iPhone, unlike previous years where it was like the middle size. And then the approximate screen sizes we're looking at here are 5.4 inches, 6.2 inches, and 6.7 inches. Now, if you know me, you know I'm a big phone person, but I've been using the smaller iPhone lately, and I think a lot of people are going to appreciate this smallest version of the iPhone 12. It's like the closest thing to what we've been hoping for, which is a refinement of that old square design. And 5.4 inches as a screen size is surprisingly compact. And just for some perspective, the last time we had a Samsung flagship of that screen size was Galaxy S7. So I've always given out a best small phone of the year in my smartphone awards at the end of every year, and it seems like it's always just the smallest iPhone versus whoever else decided to make something like a small flagship in the past year, because it's such a rare thing to do. So I have a feeling it's going to look the same way this year with this small iPhone. And then at the other end of the spectrum, the biggest iPhone.
Vy ste radšej takýto, jak to povedať, takmer hranatý telefon, alebo radšej one oble pičovinky?
Is even bigger. 6.7 inches is massive. That would be the biggest iPhone ever, and also consequently their biggest battery ever, and the most room internally in any iPhone. But really, I gotta say, after all these iOS 14 updates we got with the widgets and everything, this is probably the phone that's most likely to take the biggest advantage of it. This is probably the phone I'm going to end up with. But if you want a breakdown of all the iOS 14 features that we have seen, link below the like button. It's a lot of stuff, and it's, I think, one of the biggest updates ever. But anyway, here's a little mock-up, thanks to the magic of video editing, of what that huge screen might look like on iPhone 12 Pro. That's my iOS 14 home screen right now, and it's just a massive canvas for watching videos.
Keď to máš kurva vo vačku, jak si do piči s tým mobil sadneš? Tak jebe ti. Alebo majú plánčet, že budeme k tomu kupovať ladvinku za $1,700. Koženú.
Gaming, multitasking, and all that sweet iOS 14 picture-in-picture stuff. Plus, the notch does look a little bit smaller when the screen is a little bit bigger. And I guess that brings us naturally to the design, which you've definitely noticed by now. Straight from the iPad Pro, we got these squared off flat sides. And you know what that means. It'll stand up on its own without a stand now. I don't know why that's so satisfying to me, but it's just fun that it does that. Now, I know most people have a case on their phone, but if I can just speak to the small minority of us who carry a phone naked, who don't have a case on it, and who feel it every day, the rounded sides of the iPhone were just a little less satisfying to hold, and these flat sides it just feels more secure and just more confidence inspiring. So beyond just the aesthetics of looking better with flat sides, I really do think like it feels better to have flat sides. So now it inherits that cleaner, more modern iPad Pro look. And we're still looking at a pretty similar camera bump on the back, Apple logo in the middle of the phone. It's still familiar iPhone, as we've said for like the last 10 straight years. But that's what Apple does. You know, they know being a better but still familiar version of what they've done for so long is just gonna work, and that's about as big of a design change.
Viem, že sa mi ľúbi tá náleštená. Bude takto vypadať? Určite. Lebo táto náleštená strana sa mi nelúbi ani
so long is just gonna work, and that's
jak
about as big of a
zrkadlo
design change as we expect to see. Now, the notch on the front, this is something the models can easily get wrong. My wish list is smaller notch, just purely for aesthetic reasons, but I also know that to keep Face ID and to keep all those sensors means you still got to keep some kind of notch, so I don't expect it to be a drastic change.
To ešte niekto počkaj, kedy príde telefón, ktorý proste nebude mať ten notch vôbec a bude ťa to skenovať proste cez oné. Videl som, že už otisk je cez displej. Keď ťa to preskenuje cez displej? Nebude to ľahšie 1000-krát, kurva?
Until they get rid of it completely. That day may come somewhere in the distant future when they decide to add Touch ID back underneath the glass of the iPhone. But generally, I wouldn't expect any drastic change with the notch this year. Also, you know how last year they said Face ID would get faster and work at more angles? I hope they take another meaningful step in that direction again this year, because, you know, it's better by a little bit, but I still, even at like a 45-degree angle, have to do that like lean to get it to see and recognize my face. And then these models are usually pretty accurate with external dimensions, and so if they are again here, these new iPhones are actually pretty thin. You know, just a tiny bit, maybe a 0.5 millimeter thinner than current phones, but they just feel thinner because of the flat sides. And just overall, the design reminds me not of the iPhone 5S, possibly the most beloved iPhone design of all time, but it actually reminds me of iPhone 4, just more of a straight up glass sandwich that actually lacks the chamfered edges. You know, maybe they'll get that chamfer machine going for lucky iPhone 13. And then, you know what else we can't tell from these dummy models is the display's refresh rate. So number one item on my wish list for the new iPhones is a ProMotion 120 hertz display, just like we've seen on a bunch of other phones so far this year, just like we've seen on iPad Pro. Rumor mill suggests we should see it on at least some of the new iPhones, maybe just the Pro models.
Počkaj, videl si tam na boku zdírku na SSD kartu, nebo se mi to zdá? Nie?
Maybe just the biggest one.
A tak to je kurva maketa pojebaná iba,
weird rumors kicking around right now, but I am looking forward to it catching up and having a
ja neviem, jak oni dokážu byť presní.
That port at the bottom,
toto, čo oni nám ukazujú, jak to dokážu byť presné voči tomu, čo to vyjde. Ja neviem, aké majú oni predikcie a tieto veci, vieš.
This is one of those things Apple's been the most stubborn about. Not that there's anything physically wrong with the Lightning port for most people. It's just USB Type-C is better and way more universal. And then let's talk about these cameras for a second. So not expecting a huge drastic change for the new cameras, but there have been some lines in iOS 14 code.
Ale tiež ináč by som ako... ja som fanúšik Apple roky, ale tiež by som chcel radšej, aby tam bol napríklad úplne jednoduchý kábel, to C-čko, USB-čko, a nie toto kurva, tento lighting zasraný. Čo to máš len na MacBooku, ale na telefóne. Na ničom inom, ty kokos.
Dug up that suggest a couple new features. So currently iPhones max out at 4K 60, or if you want super slow motion 240 FPS, that's 1080p. But those new lines of code suggest new iPhones will be able to do 4K 240 FPS, which is just silly. But it's funny, I have dedicated cameras here in the studio that are not capable of 4K 240 FPS. I think the Red camera is barely capable of that in the first place. That's just Apple straight flexing their image processing pipeline, and their new performance, whatever the new chip is in the iPhone, should be top notch as usual. Get it? Top notch. Anyway, you can see on the models, the smallest iPhone, the iPhone 12, has 2 cameras, while the Pro models have 3. Makes sense, but it also has me wondering about that LiDAR. Remember LiDAR on the iPad Pro's cameras for better and faster AR experiences? The question for me when we saw that was, okay, is that now required for Apple's vision of the future of AR? And if so, are we going to see it in every new iPhone?
So, a oni, čiže myslíte, že oni tie líky, ako, že čo, myslíte, že Apple má svojich, ktorým povie, že vypustite toto, nech sa okolo toho začína pomaličky rozprávať, nech to spracovávame, nech vidíme, jak na to ľudia reagujú, že sú tie líky priamo od Apple? Že načrtneme im trošku, nech sa tom trošku rozpráva, nech sa tom, vieš, dá do vedomia. Môže tak byť asi, že? Lebo oni týkou minulý rok sa mi zdá, jak nám ukazovali tú 11, tak ono to prišlo hádam o niekoľko mesiacov skôr a to bolo sa mi zdá to isté, čo nám ukázali youtuberi, tí kokot. Nie, iba jeden to ukradol, za to, že je tmavšej pokožky, neznamená, že to kurva musel ukradnúť, ty idiot.
That's an unknown right now, but that's something to keep an eye out for. As of right now, this suggests we won't have LiDAR.
Už se těším na dobu, kdy bude voda víc než tyto moderní kokotiny a ta kofola, co ten mobil ukazuje, patří na bavlnou plantáž.
Ty si totálny dement.
That's still in its normal place on the top right. So this little extra button, which is on the bottom left of the 12 Pro and on the middle left and middle right of the 12 Pro Max, is that a fingerprint reader? Is that a smart connector for some sort of accessories or wireless charging?
Ináč by bolo dobre, keby tam je. Ináč by sa mi možno ľúbilo, aby bol ten, vieš, že by to potiahli by ten displej na celý, že by tam nebol tento spodný kokot, ale otisk by to bralo z boku nejako. A to by mohlo byť dobre. Aj to majú nejaké telefóny istou, že? Že z boku ti to bere otisk. Vieš, že by sa nemal tu dole? Ale mal by si to tu z boku normálne. Samsung to má? Samsung je po piči. Samsung je vpredu ako kokot. Škoda, že ten systém pojebaný sa nedá vydržať a tie plastiaky skurvené, veľké, hnusné, ladvinkácké.